Let senators distinguish themselves by the sheer eloquence of their commitment to the better parts of party ideologies, not the perfected biology-laced ethnic identity politics of the everyday politician. The place of Senate in the future of this country will only be secured when Senate acts and behaves like the upper house it was supposed to be. A house eminently capable of rising above narrow partisan politics, a house capable of engaging beyond the ethnic lens of the Kenyan politics, a house capable of debating real issues affecting Kenyans devoid of narrow political interests. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, honorable senators, for the support you have given me during my tenure as a Chief Justice and the President of the Supreme Court, and I thank you very much.
Good evening and thank you so much for joining us on The Last Word tonight. My name is Sophia Wanuna. We just heard there from the Chief Justice and the President of the Supreme Court, Dr. Willy Mutunga, in his address to the Senate, making him the first Chief Justice to address Parliament, or if you like, one of the Houses of Parliament, and this coming a day before he exits the judiciary. It has been 5 years of Mutunga's leadership at the helm of one of the arms of government. And in the show tonight, we'll be looking at how he's performed. Has he been able to achieve the promises he gave at the very beginning, especially when he launched the Judiciary Transformational Framework, or has he failed? He has had critics and also those who have lauded his work. So we'll look and canvass that in the show tonight. We'd like to hear your views. What do you think of the Chief Justice's performance even as he leaves the judiciary? And of course, remember, he's living at a time that the Supreme Court specifically has been on the spotlight. We've seen the intrigues that have been unfolding there, which we'll also discuss tonight. Is it as a result of a breakdown in leadership, or is it issues that were beyond and above his purview? So be part of our conversation tonight. At Sophia Wanuna is where you can tweet me. And joining me in studio for a conversation tonight on my immediate right is Nelson Harvey. He is an advocate, and also with us is activist Okia Omtate, who was one of the parties in the matter that we saw yesterday at the Supreme Court. It was quite a number of hours that many of you had to stay in there. So gentlemen, thank you for being with us tonight on the show. So we'll get to the Chief Justice and his tenure and how he's performed. But let's begin with what we've seen unfold the last couple of weeks. And yesterday you were one of the parties. In what capacity? What was your prayer before the court?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. My prayer before the court was basically that there are too many conflicts affecting the Supreme Court, and it was not best suited to handle the matter. And so I requested, and I was fortunately to carry the day, that the bench should not hear the matter because there were various conflicts here and there. And so that's what came to pass. And that was just my prayer, because I thought that we could avoid making matters worse than they already were, going that route.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, and we'll get more into that. But Javi, break it down for Kenyans what it is we had yesterday from the judges, because, you know, we saw the judge Smoking Wanjala as well as Mohammed Ibrahim recuse themselves, say that they did not want to be parts of this particular matter. And of course, Njoki's position as well was heard, and Judge Ojwang, and then the Chief Justice came. So on one hand, there are those who felt, okay, so the matter of Rawal and Tunoy is done. They have to leave, but then we understand there's still another hearing on Thursday. So what is all this? Break it down for us.
Well, I think what transpired yesterday has to be seen in the broader perspective. It's not just limited to the personal issues that were raised by Justice Tunoy and Justice Rawal.
Right.
And I think as it has unfolded today, it's quite apparent that the decision that was given by the Supreme Court had a lot to bear on who the next Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice would be. And it came out quite clear that in the quest for the replacement of those two key officers, there are different interests that came out quite openly as indicating the possible outcome of what this should be. And if you look at it from one perspective, the majority of the decision that upheld, so to speak, my friend's position,
Citizen Umtata,
that the Supreme Court should not hear this matter, carried the day. And that would be an interest that will seek to ensure a particular direction is taken as to the succession for the Chief Justice and for the Deputy Chief Justice. On the other hand, it has widely been claimed that those for the status quo were not in favor of the decision that was taken by the majority. In essence, therefore, suggesting the maintenance of Deputy Chief Justice Rawal in office for a short while as the procurement of their replacement is taken.
It's taking place.
Yes.
So you say you did not manage to get your prayers, but there are those who interpret what happened yesterday as to mean this bench, as we saw yesterday, will not hear this particular matter. So isn't that a win? Because then in terms of quorum and those who recuse themselves and the CJ leaving, there isn't enough people to hear this.
Well, there are many ways of skinning a cat, as they say.
Right.
And so I think the bottom line is that the decision of the Court of Appeal will be the prevailing decision until maybe in future where there will be, if it will be possible to challenge the decision when we have a different bench that can hear the matter. So that might mean maybe waiting until at least 3 of the justices are off the bench, the current remaining ones. And so I think to me is that what was most important for me was to stop what was happening, because there have been all manner of schemes. When I joined this matter in the High Court, I joined it after I looked at the pleadings that had been filed. And I noticed they had taken a slightly one-dimensional view of the issue. And so when I came in and I introduced quite a bit of a different dimension, which helped tilt the case one way. And so I came in purely on those grounds, and during the trials, I maintained my independence, like in the Court of Appeal when the Judicial Service Commission tried to block the justices from proceeding to appeal. I changed side and said, no, if it's a question of appealing, they must appeal to the Court of Appeal. And that one carried the day. And so when the appeal was then lodged, I went back and said it had no merit, they have to go at 70. And before that, I personally saw a problem, because in the High Court we had a bench of judges who were appointed after the new constitution, who are not affected by the dispute.
Right.
In the Court of Appeal, we had a mixed bench. There were 7 judges, we had a mixed bench. And leading that bench, I'm one of the people who wrote a letter to the Chief Justice and said, the way I see this matter coming out and what has happened in the Supreme Court, where judges have taken positions on the issue, written memoranda, then several other things had happened, and you yourself and the other judge are members of the Judicial Service Commission, and you are numerically very small, there's likely to be a crisis. So what we need to do is to have a bench that can speak with finality. That's how we ended up, among other things, the 7-judge bench. And we mixed both judges from the point who are going to be affected by the decision and those not affected by the decision. And so when it sustained the decision of the Court of Appeal, when it sustained the decision of the High Court, I naturally expected the matter to settle there. So when I saw that the application had been made and some were in circumstances that were not very clear, then I began saying maybe there are other forces at play, as Mr. Javier said. And I thought that as an institution, the Supreme Court is too important to be brought down on this issue.
Right.
And so I put in 2 things. I made a motion. I filed an independent motion seeking that the judges remove themselves, or the judges, one either disqualify themselves or they remove themselves. Then I also filed a preliminary objection. The 2 are collapsed and had together. And so they carried the day.
Yeah.
And so virtually is that the ruling of the Court of Appeal stands for the time being.
Right.
And its impact is that the vacancies are now available. And
the JSC
filled.
has gone ahead to advertise.
Yeah, the vacancies are available. Because the other thing is that it's only the Chief Justice who can announce a vacancy of the judge. So if Justice Mutunga leaves office before those vacancies are announced, there's going to be another complication. Because
is that the Chief Justice, not the JSC?
No, the JSC does not announce the vacancies. It's the Chief Justice. The JSC advertises the vacancies for filling them. Okay. But the person who announces the vacancies is the Chief Justice. Yeah, under the Judicature Act, something like that.
The Judicial Service Commission Act.
Yeah. Act. All right. So we have now the Court of Appeal decision being upheld, and the petitioner has been told you still have room to appeal, but after Supreme Court is reconstituted. We have a matter on Thursday. What are we now expecting to see there? Is there still room for Tunoy and Rawal to continue serving as judges of the Supreme Court from where you sit?
I think any such a chance will, it will be a snowball chance in hell, because for the last 2 weeks, the Supreme Court has been quite determinate in the manner in which they make decisions. It's always been 3-2. So in the event that that pattern will be followed tomorrow, it's most likely that the requested stay will not be granted. So the possibility of Justice Rawal and Justice Tunoy coming back to the bench, either after tomorrow or in the near future, seems very remote.
Right.
And you can look at it from this perspective. The final decision that was given by the Chief Justice was that the Court of Appeal decision stands for now, until such a time as it is affirmed or reversed by a Supreme Court differently constituted than yesterday. Now, yesterday, the majority decision was that the entire 5 judges of the Supreme Court were conflicted for one reason or another. 2 judges being conflicted on account of the fact that they sit in the Judicial Service Commission. 3 judges on account of the fact that they'd expressed an opinion on the age of retirement. Now, bearing in mind what we're seeing now, and with the possibility of a replacement for Justice Mutunga, Justice Rawal, and Justice Tunoy in the very near future, then it will mean any subsequent full bench of the Supreme Court that shall sit will always have 2 judges who may be conflicted for one reason or another.
Yeah.
This being any of the 2 judges in the bench that sat yesterday.
Okay.
And I mean, all those 4 judges are fairly young. They will be in the Supreme Court for a long period of time. So I do not foresee any justice being done to Justice Rawal and Justice Tunoy on account of a definitive meritorious determination of the appeal.
Yeah, because yes, as you say, even when a Supreme Court is reconstituted and say they appeal after these positions have been filled, it's not like a judge will say, okay, now that you appear to have won in this matter, then I move as the deputy CJ, come back. It wouldn't work that way. That would be also quite an interesting position to find ourselves.
Yes, and I think it's quite apparent from the Judicial Service Commission point of view, they will not want such a scenario to take place.
Okay.
And they made it quite clear. Well, I will not determine the merits of, or otherwise, of their claim on that issue. But they said, however long the determination of this appeal may take, if at all it will ever be taken, then the 2 judges will suffer no loss. They will be paid in money. But you see, the falsehood of this representation is this. I do not think judges take the oath to serve as a judge merely because they want to be paid.
Remuneration.
Yes, it's not about remuneration. Judges want to serve. It's a calling.
Okay.
It's an office of honor.
All right.
So it may not be a very appropriate submission, or if I may use the word of Professor Juang, it will be an inarticulate argument to claim that, well, let the judges await the appeal, and then they'll be paid in money. In my view, they appear to be a great denial of justice.
All right, so you've both alluded to these players or forces, and many others have opined about those who want to influence and be part of the decision-making process of who will succeed the CJ and now the DCJ. Who do you think these people are, and to what end?
Maybe if I answer that, maybe I'll just take off from where Counsel Javier has left off. Unfortunately, when Justice Rawal and Justice Tunoi filed their pleadings in the High Court, a big chunk was about the money they were going to lose if they retired before 74.
All right.
So the question of money was very, very central to it.
To them?
To them. Because they said the retirement age had vested some property rights in them and things like those, and their pensions would be affected and so much. So the issue of the money, to me, was the main issue. The question of losing dignity and whatever never came up. What they urged was that they are going to be affected by losing income, by losing pensions, by losing stuff like that. So those are among the things that they urged in the court, which they had to polish up their papers and bring it aside. And that's why I came in and said they have got no right to employment, so they cannot claim property rights. And I brought in decisions that are 200 years old from the US, where those issues had been handled and tackled similar to ours. So that's so when I think Mwite submitted yesterday, he may really have been referring to their own prayers of losing out in terms of monetary terms. Okay. But that's beside the point. Now the question of cartels in any dynamic society, even in a church, you have got different viewpoints, and people will be congregate around viewpoints and organize to make their viewpoint dominant in the group without destroying the group. So to me, I think it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that there are those kind of contestations for these offices. The only thing is that it should not be conducted with any criminal element in it. It should be done in such a manner that the law is observed, and if it is a question of getting a new Chief Justice and whatever, merit is the main thing, so that we get somebody who is able to deliver that thing. When if he looks like me, let him look like me, but also be able to do the work that he's going to do. So looking like me does not become the only consideration. And maybe Javi might be a better placed to talk about cartels, because I had him submit heavily about cartels in court.
So tell
but
us.
Me, I'm not.
Yeah.
I just came in from the
and we
street.
saw one of the councils actually withdraw and talk a lot as well. I forget his name, senior.
Dr. John Kaminwa. Yes, that was him. Now, I think the starting point will be this. If indeed my good friend Mr. Umtata admits there are cartels, and a very senior member of one of those cartels admitted membership in open court. Now, cartels in their legal and ordinary sense do not operate within the purview of the law. They are organizations that seek to defeat the ordinary course of law. So cartels will not be good, especially in a matter that relates to the administration of justice. We can have cartels in drug trafficking, in something else, but not in the judiciary. But anyway, let's examine who could be these possible cartels.
Yes.
Now, when Mutunga came into office in 2011, there was wide public views that his entry into the judiciary and the office of the Chief Justice had been procured by interest groups. And a review of publications immediately before the advertisement for the vacancy of that office will indicate that as early as October 2010, one very senior advocate had already pre-qualified Dr. Mutunga as the best front runner.
Which one?
And this was my very good teacher, Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi. This publication came out in the Nairobi Law Monthly of October 2010. And as FET will have had it, 3 months thereafter, he was elected to the Judicial Service Commission. Now, he ended up being a very influential member in the Judicial Service Commission, a factor that could have played a big role in the recruitment of the outgoing Chief Justice.
Right.
Now, over the years, the 5 years that Dr. Mutunga has been in office, there have been so many developments that have come about, most of them structural and personnel. But the biggest undoing during the tenure of Dr. Mutunga has been the permanent hold that this cartel has had on him. You will find that serious issues concerning the Judicial Service Commission are always dealt by members of this cartel. With serious litigation, you will always find Honorable Paul Mwite, you'll always find Ahmed Nasir, you'll always find Issa Mansour, and very lately my very good friend and classmate Charles Kanjama. And it seems as if my also good friend Apollo Mboya has been roped into this cartel.
So this is a cartel. Those are the people you're saying are part of.
Yes. And then if you widen the net of this cartel, you will find that they rope in the operations of the Law Society of Kenya. And this is also of paramount significance to the issue, because immediately before Dr. Mutunga was recruited as Chief Justice, Eric Mutua had been elected as chairman of the Law Society of Kenya. And all these individuals I've mentioned have played a key role, either in the recruitment of judges immediately after the new Judicial Service Commission came into place, the vetting process, and occasionally the firing of certain individuals in the judiciary who do not toe the line of the cartel. And then fast forward, in January 2016, Mr. Ahmed Nasser came up with a disclosure that he had discovered an attempt to curtail the powers and independence of the Judicial Service Commission in recruiting the Chief Justice. These were the amendments to the Judicial Service Commission Act.
Yeah.
And he went quite clear on it and said this was unconstitutional. And the statement that he made in January are the very same statements that he made in October 2010, that the office of the Chief Justice is so key to the administration of justice, it should not be left in the control of the executive. Now, I think the independence of the judiciary is very important, but independence of the judiciary should not just be restricted to independence from the executive and the legislature. The judiciary also has to be independent from private individuals who seem to have vested interests that they may want to process through the judicial system.
Through the judiciary.
Yes.
What do you make of that? He has named individuals he believes are part of those that you were also alluding to.
Well, me, I was alluding to nobody, but...
well, to the cartels and individuals behind
yeah, but I just
the
said
scenes.
if they are cartels, and that should be, you know, he's a practicing advocate.
He knows more.
He has got a bird's eye view of things.
Yeah.
Me, I have got just a keyhole view. I peep through the keyhole, and I can't turn my keyhole view into a world view, unless I'm an idiot. So I don't know what goes on there, but the important point he has said that the independence of the judiciary should be wholesome, whereby the institution should be not beholden to private interests, be they business or commercial interests. It should not be beholden to the executive or to the legislature. And so that one is a very, very important point. And that independence is important. And even ideologically, there should be some independence at the level of the individual judges in terms of how they will approach issues and give determinations, and not maybe render decisions in a manner that is designed to maybe please certain quarters or to do things like those.
Okay.
And that has been also a major problem in the practice of the judiciary. And sometimes maybe even without the influence of without even the executive bearing on them, you get a feeling sometimes that a judge is going out of his way trying to please the executive and maybe to be noticed for promotion or things like those.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about as well the implications still of yesterday's decision. Does this now render futile the tribunal that's investigating Judge Tunoi?
I think the tribunal that investigates Justice Tunoi started from a wrong premise. Reason being, the moment that the accusations against Justice Tunoi were leveled by the Chief Justice and extremely aggravated by publications.
Was it by the Chief Justice or he communicated them?
Well, it was the Chief Justice.
Okay.
Because it has come to pass that actually some of the key members of the cartel are the ones who procured this complaint.
Right.
The complaint minuted in the affidavit of Kiplagat is indicated to have been drawn by Mr. Mwite, is indicated to have been commissioned by Mr. Issa, and the disclosure of this affidavit first came on a Saturday by a tweet that was made by Apollo Mboya, and quickly Nasser took cue, and within a few hours, this following Sunday, the issue was on news, and the subsequent Monday, the Chief Justice descended the famous staircase and said, we have a big problem that we have to deal with. Now, at the point in time that this problem became public, the issue of retirement age for judges was still very hot in the High Court and the Court of Appeal. And when, after completion of its inquiry, the Judicial Service Commission advised the President to constitute a tribunal, the President rightfully suggested that, look, as the case stands, the High Court has decreed that Tunoi has retired on account of having attained the age of 70.
Right.
Would it be prudent to await the outcome of any such appeal before you take any such action? Now, JSC's response was crisp and quick. They said, we need our pound of meat, and we also need to spill some blood. They said, constitute the tribunal. And then when it became quite apparent that the case against Justice Tunoi was headed nowhere, and the Court of Appeal had made a determination that would have likely ended up in the Supreme Court, there was a desperate hurry at the Supreme Court to fast-track the hearing of this matter in order that there could be a final determination by the court which will eventually deny the tribunal the opportunity of interrogating this matter, because the tribunal can only investigate a complaint on a sitting judge. And if it's now final decision by the highest court on land that a judge retires at 70, then the tribunal cannot investigate any claim against Justice Tunoi.
Yeah.
It must of necessity wind up.
But that said,
yes,
as we stand, it was put together, the tribunal. It has been having the sittings, conducting the sittings. Is it now going to have to close shop?
Well, I think they'll need to make their own decision. My very good friend Ngatia asked them a day before yesterday to make a final determination even before interrogating matters further. But in their wisdom or lack of it,
right,
they indicated that they will proceed to the meritorious determination of this issue. But I think what appears to be the logical legal conclusion to this issue is that the tribunal's mandate has come to an end.
Has come to an end. All right, we want to take a short break here on the last
I have
word.
a slightly different view.
Right.
Given that we're investigating past conduct of the judge, I don't know if it necessarily has to wind up or whether it has to find it, because the issues of the judge have not been finalized. He has got packages that he's supposed to be entitled to, like his benefits. Will he be entitled to his benefits? Will he face the sack? Will he be reinstated? Will he be cleared so that he can enjoy his benefits? There are all those debatable issues that are around the issue.
But can't it be investigated outside the tribunal, because the tribunal is 4 sitting judges, so if he's found now not no longer?
The tribunal is a bit of a gray area,
right.
Whether it's for sitting judges or for investigating past conduct of judges who are in it. So that there are those issues there. The other thing is that, well, if the tribunal drops the ball, I naturally, because of the grave nature of the allegations, I would naturally expect it to become a criminal investigation under the Director of Criminal Investigations.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect the matter to die. I would expect the matter to transit from being a tribunal investigation
to a different arm.
To a criminal investigation by the Director of Criminal Investigations.
All right, you're watching The Last Word, and we still want to talk about the CJ's legacy, especially as he exits tomorrow. Today was his last day. He'd said he'd want to leave office in good time to allow for a smooth transition, a transition that appears to have quite captured the attention of many, and we've seen the intrigues around just the succession of the CJ. Some of your tweets this evening before we go to break, Bire Hwasi, you're saying Judiciary cartels named. I like this, and he's enjoined and quoted some of the names that you'd mentioned earlier. And then you have Gideon saying it's such a shame that we have our judiciary appearing to go down a drain that we hoped would come out of following the promulgation of the Constitution. Sela, thank you for the show. It is good that we are able to canvass issues and to be able to break it down to Kenyans. Gunia Yamira, you say no, you don't think the Supreme Court has performed well. Magata, it is important to note that this is all about 2017 and who is on the bench if we go to a presidential election petition. Keep your thoughts coming at Sophia Wanuna is where you can find me. After this break, we discuss more about the legacy of outgoing Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga. Stay with us.
We see ourselves in a very, very, strategic position.
Only 10% were operational at less than 10% capacity.
Hii ndio hali ya baadhi ya mahospitali hapa.
Kila mtu yuko mbioni kwa hofu ya maisha.
We receive patients all the way from Somalia.
Wiki mbili zilizopita hakuwa na uhakika wa hali yake.
Tumesafana usizi yangu by the way. Utalia ameturudisha nyuma. Tukienda kotini tunaambiwa kila Friday tunaambiwa kujeni next Friday mpaka imekuwa mwaka 4 saa hii. Katika
Judiciary tuna ofisi ambayo inaitwa Office of the Judiciary Ops Person. Tumefungua ili watu waweze kulalamikia katika hiyo ofisi. Hiyo case hatujapata. Wajua wakati mwingine mambo utatiliwa baada ya mtu kujua kuna jambo fulani. Ikiwa kuna case yako imechelewa sana au kuna case ambayo haijafanywa au kama hiyo case ya huyo dada ambayo yuko Makandara na imekaa miaka mingi, siku hizi kuna ofisi ambayo unaweza kuenda pale ukalalamikia na tumejaribu sana kusaidia.
Vijana watatu 15 years of age Kiamaiko walishikwa na polisi na walitolewa kwa nyumba Vile walikataa kutoa hongo, walienda wakachajiwa na felony. Saa hizi mahakama inataka wapatiane cash bail ya 50,000 shillings na wote ni vijana underage minors. So this is a concern, it's a big concern that the judiciary is failing us because it's contributing towards police brutality and police impunity mashinani.
Let me answer that because I know Mumbi has the Kacheke virus also. She knows, Mumbi is a clever woman. She knows that if you go to a magistrate who says 50,000, okay, that can be reviewed by a judge, you know. So when you say the judiciary is failing you and you haven't exhausted the processes, surely you are not being, you're not being fair.
Since when you got into office 5 or so years ago, there are things that were very clear in your mind, the things that you really wanted to do. And you thought, when I get in there with my experience, with my expertise, I want to change a few things. What are the 3 things that you wanted to change, that you came in and you've done?
What we have managed to do collectively in the judiciary is what makes me say I'm leaving it a better institution than I found it. But having said that, it's a struggle that continues. So people have to consolidate and protect those reforms. We had what we called the judiciary transformation framework, which had 4 pillars: infrastructure, transformational leadership. The other one was using technology as an enabler for for just administration of justice, and we focused on those 4. We focused on those 4.
All right, you're watching The Last Word here on KTN News. Thank you so much for staying with us. Listening there to Dr. Willy Mutunga, the Chief Justice, leaving the judiciary tomorrow. He retires after 5 years. And of course, that was at Korogosho on Sunday, somewhat town hall, if you like, where he got to interact with Kenyans who asked him questions, and he talked about his legacy and also that judiciary transformational framework. And I want to talk about that. In fact, last year, the Public Accounts Committee had what some called a harsh indictment of the CJ and his tenure and service and helm of the judiciary, criticizing his leadership, saying that he perhaps would have needed to have had more experience leading a more vast, bigger organization to manage the affairs of the judiciary. But we'll hear what our guests have to say this evening. But before we get to the legacy, let me take us back to what you talked about in the first half of the show, Harvey, when you mentioned these cartels. And of course, important to ask, do you have evidence of these allegations you've made? Because people watching would imagine it's quite a claim to make on any individual.
Yes, I think the evidence is so enormous that if it were to be tabled, I don't think many people will be happy about it. And last week we appeared before the Supreme Court and tabled part of that evidence. And you could see the acrimony, attrition, the rebellion with which our attempt to do this was welcome.
What exactly did you table?
Well, we tabled several publications by the Nairobi Law Monthly, including the one that Ahmed Nasser indicated that Mutunga was the most suitable person for Chief Justice, way before the office was advertised. We also tabled the Nairobi Law Monthly for February 2015, where Ahmed Nasser, Muite, Mutua had created what they call a cash award for vetting the most exemplary judges. So figure this. You have 3 very prominent lawyers who appear before judges and then have the right to determine which of these judges are the best performing judges. And then they give them cash awards. And then they will appear before these judges again. I mean, judges are human beings.
But did your evidence stand?
Well, the evidence was never admitted in the first place. In fact, one of the judges of the Supreme Court expressed a lot of dissatisfaction bordering on embarrassment that this evidence appears to be in the line of matters that cannot be admissible in court. But anyway, if you were to interrogate most of these publications, for instance, when Ahmed Nasser was invited last year to the judges' colloquium, he gave a paper that created a lot of controversy. And that paper was quite clear in the manifestation of his thoughts, the manifestation of the thoughts of the cartel he controls, that judges must retire at 70, whether they were appointed under the old constitution or the new constitution.
All right.
And then as day succeeds night, in the subsequent month, the JSC manipulated into action. They sent a retirement notice to Justice Rawal on the 1st of September 2015. 4 days thereafter, on the 5th of September, they advertised a vacancy in her office. And in fact, in the subsequent publication in the Nairobi Law Monthly of November 2015, Ahmed Nasser took pride of the fact that the JSC had only acted upon his advice and the concurrent advice of the Attorney General.
All right. And of course, we don't have any of these individuals you've mentioned on the show, of course, tonight to have their side of the story. And would like to clarify that those are your views, not of KTN News. Very important, knowing that these matters could get very tricky sometimes. But of course, we look forward to following up if you do seek to pursue that matter at a different date. But let's get to the Chief Justice. And why are you disappointed, Omtata? Because there are those who criticize the CJ for having sat on the bench up to the last point before he left office. Because what we've seen in the past is before judges leave office or even are transferred, they don't take new matters or sit on the bench, because then it would be seen you're just about to leave. Why would you be so heavily involved, especially on such important issues?
Well, first of all, maybe I go back just one remark on the cartels. I think the issue of the cartels is, you see, we are talking of cartels, but we are referring to one. And the rumors
alleged cartel.
Yeah, alleged cartel. The rumors have that Harvey also leads another cartel, which is trying to get to regulate, swear, and get control of the judiciary.
Okay.
So
he's trying to do the one he's accusing.
So these are people. Like they say Waswahili wanajuana kwa vilemba. Sasa sisi sio Waswahili. We are left on dry land. So he heads a cartel.
So you should tell us, go find out and tell us next time about his cartel.
I don't think it's worth the effort because it looks like it is powerless. There's a powerless cartel which is complaining on the side, and another cartel is in the center.
Yeah.
But that's on the lighter side.
Sure.
When I come back to the Chief Justice, well, the Supreme Court is such that it is numerically small. It's numerically small. There's very few judges. So if Justice Willy could not sit, that bench could never have been formulated. In fact, we would never have gotten to where we are getting.
Right.
You see. But he remained Chief Justice the last day. And maybe you cannot apply the other standards that apply elsewhere. But I've seen people observe, and I've even had observed when I came in, that the Supreme Court as we have it needs to be expanded. So that there can be room for judges to maybe do other things as the court continues. Right now it's almost hamstrung, that if one or two judges move or three, then the court is paralyzed.
Right.
Yeah, so that's another area for people to look into. But generally I think that the Chief Justice Mutunga, for me, needs to be looked at in a historical manner from where this country has come from, where it was going. He came in a transition period. He has had to deal with an executive, both the former and the current, which largely does not believe in the rule of law or the constitution, the way it is structured. They would like to do things their own way. They found the law, they sometimes find the law as slowing them down. You even had remarks by the president that people go to court and contest the tenders, and they do whatever, and they do it, and they slow down the pace at which he would like to work.
Right. So
we had those additional problems. And then the other thing is that also Mutunga came in from a different from a different world of doing things. whereby he did not have to be to micromanage everything. He wanted systems to run. I think he believes in creating systems. And he also was almost like a giant surrounded by dwarfs, whereby wherever he put his leg, he stepped on people. And because of the way he was doing his things. But to me, for me, he has achieved one good thing, that at least the independence of the judiciary can be spoken of today in many ways than one. The matters of corruption that came into the judiciary, the administrative side, I really think he was let down by maybe the people he trusted or entrusted power to. And in jurisprudence, I think Mutunga believed in shifting the center of the republic from the governor's residence at State House to the street, where the ordinary Kenyan is found in the majority. And so he made the courts very accessible. And so to me, even with the symbolic shading of the old garb that the judges used to wear and make them look very remote and what have you, he tried to mainstream the judiciary and bring it at the center of the republic, and also to make it available to the ordinary people. And his own conduct, he demystified the figure of the Chief Justice by mingling very easily. So he may have had his challenges here and there, but me, I want to look at him as having laid a foundation. He may not have built the tower, but he dug deep so that we can construct a strong foundation for the tower. He did not believe in building on quicksand, where the tower could collapse in the future. So to me, he has performed fairly well. And
on a scale of 1 to 10, you'd give him?
I gave him 9.
9. Wow, that's good. That's excellent.
They have done extremely well.
That's an A. All right, and you're clapping. Let's hear what you have to say, Javi, because the Public Accounts Committee last year said when he came into office as CJ that he appeared to have a good understanding of the issues bedeviling the judiciary, that he gave lyrical, they said in their reports, speeches and addresses about the issues and, you know, the solutions that should be put in place, the measures to get judiciary to where it should be, but that he failed. When it came to practice, that was not seen. They in fact, as I said before we went on break, said that for the next CJ, it should be somebody who, you know, has had vast experience in managing big organizations, that in as far as the financial mispropriety that was witnessed, although he wasn't found culpable as an individual, that he should have done more. And of course, the JSC and the amount of allowances and all the things that were happening, you know, under his nose. So highly criticized by the PAC. Do you agree with some of what they had to say?
Yes and no. Now, and let me go on record. I do not want to be the grumbling, whiny kid that complained everything about Mutunga. Let's give credit where it is deserved. When Dr. Mutunga took the reins of power in the judiciary was in a very deplorable state, both structurally, personnel, and otherwise. And to his credit, he has built so many courts. He has hired so many judges. He has made justice accessible to everybody. In fact, I think if we are operating in systems before 2010, Mtata would not have had an opportunity of speaking in court for this
matter.
7 days that he has engaged us in what I may say was almost very articulate way. But now that is where the praise ends. And to that extent, I will fully agree with the PSC. I think Mutunga handled himself in a manner that interested the public more than served the interest of the public. For instance, he had so many of these shows in Gorogosho, elsewhere, more often disrupting court processes by requiring judges even to attend some of these things. I mean, debts that have been taken way in advance could not be utilized because of the disruptive nature of his program. And maybe this could be attributable to the fact that he didn't have an instinct in the bench or at the bar. Because you see, the practice of law is a very intricate science. that requires meticulous dexterity in planning and organization. You have a diary, you plan for this activity, but these are things that it will appear Dr. Mutunga had a problem getting used to. And also when it came to management and finance, it was quite apparent that immediately he took over office, several forces took control of the kitty in the judiciary. And this opened the eye of Parliament to inquire, what is it that is happening here? And I do not think Dr. Mutunga will have received the welcome he had today in Senate if he went to the National Assembly. I think the thrashing that he will have had there will have been of greater magnitude than anybody else has ever given it to him. And then lastly, towards the end of his tenure, there have been things that leave so much to be desired. And let's emphasize on this case concerning the retirement of Justice Rawal and Justice Tunoe. Now, Dr. Mutunga said that matters of justice cannot be permitted to be processed in turtle speed. They must be processed in lightning speed, in the manner in which an advocate for one of the judges stated. That may well be so, but towards what end do you fast track the hearing of the matter? It became quite apparent yesterday that the minds of 3 of the judges who gave the determining decision was made up that this appeal will never be heard on merit. So it comes quite clear that the only reason as to why he fast-tracked the hearing of these matters was to get rid of these 2 judges. But why did he have to do this?
Well, wouldn't anyone want a matter fast-tracked, would be the argument.
Well, everybody wants a matter fast-tracked. But why would you fast-track a matter to ensure that it doesn't reach its meritorious determination? He knew for a fact that the judges were, so to speak, conflicted. They will not hear the merits of this appeal. So to that extent, I think that was a travesty of justice. But I think if you look at the things that have been happening quite lately, it is quite apparent that he may have been pushed to make some of these decisions.
Pushed by whom?
Well, by those cartels. Because about 2 months ago, he made another very weird decision. He transferred about 105 judges in total disregard of the Constitution, the Judicial Service Act, and the 4 pillars that you heard him speak about at the Senate.
Did you move to court?
Well, we moved to court, but predictably, our quest for justice missed the same outcome as was the outcome of the 2 judges yesterday.
Right. So unfortunately, our time is up, and I really wish you had more, especially to canvass the question of his legacy. But on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rank him? He gave him a 9.
I think let me separate it on 2 fronts. On infrastructure and personnel acquisition, I will give Mutunga 9. But on progressive actual delivery of justice to the consumers of justice, I will give him 5.
You'll give him 5.
Yes.
So before we wrap up, let me get your thoughts going forward, because now we're talking about succession, and there have been several names fronted as to likely successors of the Chief Justice, including the Attorney General, the Judge of the Supreme Court, Smoking Wanjala, Kihara Kariuki, who's a judge, presiding judge of the Court of Appeal, Lenaola as well, High Court Judge, and Mbogoli. Are these people, you would say this one would make a good Chief Justice? And as you say that these are all insiders, do you think we need another outsider?
Well, I don't know whether we need an outsider or an insider. I just want a person of integrity who will uphold the dignity of the judiciary and autonomy of the institution from any influence. And so I think that I hope that when the Judicial Service Commission comes to recruiting, it will consider that in terms of character, in terms of experience, and work towards giving us a Chief Justice, wherever he'll come from, whether it be from the Commonwealth or wherever. I don't know if the Commonwealth are qualified
Why will we want Muzungu?
I'm not saying comrades could be from Uganda.
No.
And what happens to the Kenyans?
So wherever they come from, yes, let us get a Chief Justice who is autonomous, who has the experience to be a judge.
So an insider. Okay.
Not necessarily an insider.
Okay. Experience.
Could have an experience of being a judge, so it could be, but that could have been as an advocate, like Harvey here can be Chief Justice. I think he's done 15 years, or not yet.
That's 15 years.
Would you pick any of this? Would you vouch for any of the names I've mentioned?
Once they are, I don't want to get into an idle debate, but once the names get mentioned, then we shall be able to assault them with the affidavits.
All right. Okay. Final words on the same.
Well, I think having looked at what achievements, which are great achievements that Dr. Mutunga has brought into the judiciary, I think the next Chief Justice should be one that will complement what was outstanding. And in my honest view, the best manager of the operations in the judiciary ought to be one that has internalized these processes, either from the bench or from the bar. And the other qualifying issue would be a thorough background check on the personality and associations of any such a possible candidate.
Yeah.
We need to avoid a situation whereby we'll have a Chief Justice who may be perceived in the eye of the public or the practitioners of law to be beholden to cartels. Yes, it's very important that the Chief Justice must be independent of outside influence. But one thing that has bedeviled the administration of the reign of Justice Mutunga has been the misconception that independence connotes separation. It has to be interdependence. You heard him talk about supremacy wars. Supremacy wars need to be avoided.
Right.
The judiciary needs to work in consonant with the legislature and the executive, and not to engage in supremacy wars.
Any of the names you'd vouch for?
Well,
now that you perhaps are more familiar with them?
One of my professors who happens to be a Supreme Court judge says, do not engage in intellectual idleness. And I think if we were to do that, we'll be engaging in intellectual idleness.
All right.
Let's give the best candidates an opportunity to be recruited in the manner best suited for this office.
We thank you both for being with us on The Last Word. Nelson Harvey, who's an advocate, and activist Okia Mtata, for being on The Last Word tonight. Quickly, some of your feedback tonight. Christopher Munyoli, the best CJ, denied himself goodies only to serve Kenyans in the truth, and you're saying best wishes to him. Harry Baraza, he's no different from the Kenyan leaders serving on the bench. Bwire Hwasi, you say the Chief Justice admitted at Korogosho that there are cartels in the judiciary, and today we have some names, allegedly. I'll remind you. Patrick Wekesa, he did his best to the complex Kenyan society. Stephen Mwema, great CJ. I don't exactly know whom his shoes will fit because I fear tribalism will penetrate the appointment. Martin Wambugu, best CJ Kenya has ever had. May God bless his future endeavors. Stanford Jakuoko, unfortunately succession battles going on may compromise the independence of his successor. We thank you for your views tonight. I'm Sophia Wanuna on behalf of all that made the show successful and possible tonight. We thank you for being with us. Have a good night and God bless you.
Good night.